The ladies have a mic for questions. You guys have a mic? You guys have a mic too? Good. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه يوم الدين نوى التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير ونفع الانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث والتمسك بكتاب الله والسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء للهدى والدلال إلى الخير ابتغاء وجناه ومرضات قربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر لا قوة إلا بالله العظيم عادتك وهب كتب أكتب بدل عبدي ودهر دارين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم اللهم إني أعوذ بك من أن أضل أو أضل أو أزل أو أزل أو أذم الظلم أو أجهل أو أجهل علي اللهم أغننا بالعلم وزينا بالحلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا رحمن الراحمين يا رحمن الراحمين يا رحمن الراحمين. طيب, so we are picking up where we left off in Imam Nawawi's Riyadh al-Salihin, so? And we are in the chapter of what? The chapter of striving, al-mujahada. And we covered all the ayahs that he mentioned in the beginning of the chapter, right? And now, as is his habit in the book, or his style, he's going to start talking about a hadith that have to do with the topic, the subject, okay? Do you guys have an English copy to read from? You have it. Great. Do you have a mic? No. All right. Bismillah. He says, فَالْأَوَّلُ عَنْ أَبِي هُرَيْرَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ قَالَ قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم إن الله تعالى قال من عادى لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب وما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضت عليه وما يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه فإذا أحببته كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به ويده التي يبطش به ورجله التي يمشي بها ولأن سألني أعطيته ولئن استعاذني لأعيذنه رواه البخاري. آذنته بمعنى أعلمته بأني محارب له. استعاذني بمعنى روي بالنون يعني روي بالنون وبالباء يعني استعاذني تمام أو استعاذ بي روي بلفظين.
Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Allah Azza wa Jal said, I declare war on anyone who opposes a friend of mine. My servant does not draw close to me with anything that I love more than by fulfilling whatever I made obligatory upon him. My servant continues to draw closer to me through optional deeds until I love him. Once I love him, I become his ears with which he hears, his eyes with which he sees, his hands with which he holds, and his legs with which he walks. If he were to ask me, I would grant him, and if he were to seek refuge in me, I would grant refuge. Bukhari.
So he starts the section with this hadith where he says, verily Allah Ta'ala, the Prophet is saying that Allah Ta'ala said, whoever what? How does he translate? Man aadali, whoever has animosity. How does he translate it? Whoever opposes a friend of mine. Man aadali waliyan. Tamam? Man aadali waliyan. Tamam. Opposes or has animosity towards or is bad towards, all kind of similar in the same realm, under the same umbrella. He says, whoever opposes a wali or a friend of mine, فَقَدْ آذَنْتُهُ بِالْحَرْبِ. Meaning what? What does he translate it? No, after the opposing part. Yeah, after that. He says, I declare war on him. I declare war on him. Tamam? So Allah Ta'ala, if we were to do a survey of the scriptures of Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, what we'll find is there are only two instances where Allah Ta'ala declares war on someone. Where he says, أَنَهُ يَأْذَنْ بِالْحَرْبِ. Tamam. And those two instances, the first one is this: if someone opposes one of his friends or has animosity towards one of his friends. Okay? The second instance is what? Is when someone is involved in interest, in usury, in riba. Someone partakes in or deals in usury, deals in riba. Those are the two instances where Allah Ta'ala, He literally says that He declares war on that individual. Okay? So that alone is enough to show us the gravity of these two things. The weightiness, tamam, or the gravity of opposing one of the people close to Allah Ta'ala, and the gravity of participating or dealing in usury or interest. Tamam, having impermissible financial transactions. طيب, so he says, من عاد لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب. So he says, whoever opposes a friend of mine. The first question we have is, what does he mean by a friend of mine? And what does he mean by opposes? And what does he mean by what? I declare war on him. Tamam? So let's start with the first question. Who is a friend of God? So the term wali is the one used in the hadith. So this term is used often, isn't it? You hear in the Quran every now and then. Like in which ayah? أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Verily the friends of Allah Ta'ala, or the awliya of Allah Ta'ala, they have no fear and they are not sad. What else? Is that all you guys memorized? إِنَّ وَلِيَ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Anything else? So it's mentioned in the Quran a lot, right? It's mentioned in the Quran a lot. It's mentioned in the Hadith. Tamam? So who is a wali, or someone who is close to Allah Ta'ala, or as he translates it here, a friend of God? So the word wali linguistically comes from someone who's close, or something that's close, proximity to. Okay? Tamam? Tamam. So that's what they mean when they say someone who's close to Allah Ta'ala. Someone who's a friend of his, because you're friends with those who are close to you, right? You love them and they love you. Tamam? So how does this proximity take place? Basically, tamam, a servant, what does he do? تَوَلَّى اللَّهَ بِالطَّاعَ وَالتَّقْوَى فَتَوَلَّاهُ اللَّهُ بِالْحِفْظِ وَالنُّصْرَى. Tamam? He upholds his end of the bargain, and he takes care of his relationship with Allah Ta'ala with worship and with God consciousness, by obeying Him and being conscious of Him. And then Allah Ta'ala, what does He do? He takes care of him through what? Through protection, protecting him and giving him victory. Tamam? So these are people that what? They're close to Allah Ta'ala because what do? They worship Allah Ta'ala. They are conscious of God. And being conscious of God, having taqwa means what? Tamam? What does having taqwa mean? What is taqwa? God consciousness. Do you guys know what it means? Yes, having taqwa is to do what Allah has commanded you to do and to refrain from that which Allah Ta'ala has commanded you to refrain from. So you do what's wajib and you leave what's haram. You do what's obligatory and you leave that which is impermissible. That's having taqwa. Not only that, after that, this person, they make plentiful, they plentifully perform the things that are recommended, the sunnah actions. Tamam. Not only that, there is someone who they don't get bored of that. Tamam. They don't get bored of that. Okay? They don't interrupt that worship. It's continuous. It has to be continuous. We're talking about the bab of mujahada, right? Striving. What was our discussion about on Monday? Doing this continuously. So they're doing that continuously. Not only that, tamam? In their hearts, all they see is God. They get to a point where all they see is God. Tamam? All they witness is Allah Ta'ala. They're completely enveloped in Allah Ta'ala, mind, body, and soul. That's all they think about. It's all they see. Okay? It's all they see. They look around and all they see are signs of Allah's majesty, signs of Allah's strength, signs of Allah's capability, signs of Allah's love, signs of Allah's mercy, signs of Allah's wrath, signs of Allah's forgiveness, signs of Allah's justice. Okay? That's all they see. All they hear are things that point them to God. All they say are things that are remembrance of Allah Ta'ala. No bad speech, nothing of disobedience goes from their limbs or goes from their tongues. Okay? These are the people that are close to Allah Ta'ala. The people who are conscious of God. Okay? The people who are conscious of God. The people who the translator translates as the friends of Allah Ta'ala. These people, he says, Man aada li waliyan faqad aadhantuhu bil harb. So just like, for example, someone would be gravely upset, okay, if someone was bad to their brother or sister or mom or dad or husband or wife or son or daughter or grandchild and so on and so forth, right? If someone was bad to someone else's loved ones, let's say so-and-so was bad to Fulan's loved one, right? How would Fulan feel? Would he be happy? No, he'd be like, why? Why are you doing that? Tamam? I love this person. Stop. Okay? So it would stir a negative response from that person. It's only natural, right? If you're bad to someone, whoever loves that person is going to what? Tamam? Is going to what? Okay? Is going to, show their dissatisfaction with your actions. And so similarly, Man aada li waliyan faqad aadhantu bil harb. Allah Ta'ala is saying is the one who opposes or shows animosity or is bad to his friends, Allah Ta'ala declares war on them. Allah Ta'ala will do something in response. And here he expresses it as he'll declare war. So there this person who opposes the friends of God. What does opposing mean? It means, for example, they're bad to them. Okay? So in general, it's haram to be bad to any Muslim. Okay? It's haram to be bad to any Muslim. If you're mean to a Muslim, if you bother a Muslim, even if, for example, someone walks in here right now and just cuts through the rows and pushes this guy aside and that person aside and steps on this guy's toes and tramples his books, he's sinned all throughout his journey to get to the front. So being bad to any Muslim is bad. It's impermissible. It's haram. Okay? But here the transgression is you're not just bad to anybody. You're bad to someone who's close to Allah Ta'ala. Okay? So you transgress their rights. You are jealous of them. You say things to them that are not appropriate. You're stubborn, tamam, when it comes to dealing with them. You bother them, you're stubborn with them. All these types of things that happen to people who are close to Allah Ta'ala. The Prophet said in Hadith that the people who are tested most are who? The prophets. And then after them, the people who are most resemble them. And then after them, the people who most resemble them, and so on and so forth. So everyone is tested according to how close they are to the Prophet ﷺ, how much they resemble him. Okay? And so these people are no doubt, or what? They're the most like the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ obviously is the Prophet ﷺ, the most complete human being. And here you have people who are friends of Allah Ta'ala who achieve this rank through their adherence to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And so when people, just like how people were bad to the Prophet ﷺ, everything you read about in the Seerah, everything you guys learned in your classes about how people were bad to the Prophet ﷺ, everything from waging war on him to committing atrocities, taking wealth, oppressing them and his companions, saying despicable things to him, calling him names, all that stuff. Similar things happen to who? People who are like the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? And so he's saying people who oppose them, show animosity towards them, are bad to them. Again, these things are haram in general, but here you're doing it to someone who's special. In this case, tamam, what happens? Allah declares war on them. Meaning what? Allah will manifest to them His justice. Allah will manifest to that person, His what? Tamam? His justice and His power. Okay? So what does it mean when Allah Ta'ala manifests His justice to someone? On the Day of Judgment, when someone comes and gets resurrected and goes to Allah Ta'ala with sins, bad deeds, transgressions, they've broken the law. Not just any law, they've broken the law of God. So here, someone breaks the law and they go to court. What does the judge do? The judge, he's called a judge. What does he do? He delivers justice. Okay, you broke the law. This is what happens. You stole, XYZ happens. You killed, XYZ happens. You ran a red light, XYZ happens. Whatever it was, right? He delivers justice. And so when it comes to Allah Ta'ala, someone who breaks his law, okay, and goes to him, is put before him on the day of resurrection, and he delivers justice. What is that justice? What is that justice? Huh? Recompense for his deeds. But what is that justice? Hellfire, right? That person is punished in the fire. If they're Muslim, they'll be punished for a period of time, eventually be taken out and sent to heaven. If they're not Muslim, their fate is different. They're there, they are there. Tamam? So here, when Allah Ta'ala says that He does what? He declares war on them, and He manifests His justice to them. So what is the justice of God? Tamam? In the afterlife, it's that. It's hellfire. So what could it possibly be? Who can bear the justice of God? Nobody. So the utmost level of that justice is what? It's destruction. Khalas, you're done. You're destroyed. Tamam? And even the smallest manifestation of that justice is something that, you wouldn't wish on anyone. You wouldn't wish on anyone. And so he says, "Man aada li waliyan faqad aadhantuhu bil harb." Tamam? So the person who shows this sort of animosity or opposition to the people who are close to Allah Ta'ala, Allah will react in this way. He will manifest to them His justice because they've transgressed. And so the special status given to these people of Allah Ta'ala, tamam, the special status given to them is because of who they are. Tamam, it's because of who they are. Okay? So can you imagine someone, the description I mentioned earlier, someone who stays away from everything that is impermissible, someone who performs everything that is obligatory, someone that does that continuously, someone that all they witness in the world is Allah Ta'ala, someone who's always mentioning Allah Ta'ala and not transgressing. You don't see any bad come from their lips or their mouth or their hands or their feet or their eyes or their thoughts or whatever. Okay? Someone like this, what kind of person are they? Tamam? What kind of person are they? Is it likely, tamam, that this person is someone who is ignorant? How can you do what Allah has commanded you, tamam, to do unless you know what those commandments are? So it's likely this person is someone of knowledge. It's likely, furthermore, this person is an inheritor of the Prophet ﷺ. It's likely as well that this person is someone who is great to people, right? Part of fulfilling the commandments of Allah Ta'ala is that what? Is that you're good to people. You're good to your loved ones. You're good to your family. You're good to your neighbors. You're good to your community. It's likely this person is also what? Is someone who spreads the message of God, okay? So all these things we just described this person with, right? Look at where they stand. Think about everything you guys have heard about the virtues of someone who seeks knowledge, the virtues of someone who is an inheritor of the Prophet ﷺ, the virtues of someone who spreads the message of God, the virtues of someone who is beneficial to humanity. There's a hadith the Prophet ﷺ says, he says, "Al-khalqu kulluhum iyalullah," that the creation, all of it is like Allah's family, in His custody, in His guardianship. وَأَحَبُّهُمْ إِلَى اللَّهِ, and the most beloved of creation to Allah Ta'ala, وَأَحَبُّهُمْ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِعِيَالِهِ. The most beloved of Allah's creation to Him is who? The person who is most beneficial to his family or those in his guardianship or custody. So this kind of person that we just described, right? What kind of concern do they have for creation? Do you imagine this kind of person just like shutting the door and like in seclusion, not caring about anyone else in the world? These are people who were like they're brought to humanity to change humanity for the better. And so someone goes and opposes this person or shows animosity to them or is bad to them or harms them. What is waiting for them in the next life? Something terrible. Now on the flip side, what happens if someone does what? Is good to them? What happens if someone helps them? What happens if someone serves them? What happens if someone even just makes them smile and tells them jokes and has them laugh? What's waiting for that person? If the retribution, the punishment for someone who's bad to them is so great, think about how great the reward is for someone who does the opposite, who shows them love, who shows them generosity, who shows them, just who's good to them and helps them, someone whose heart is attached to them. That reward is vast. That reward is immense. In fact, even just looking at them changes people's lives. Just looking at them changes people's lives. The greatest example is the Prophet ﷺ. There were people who just looked at him and like, they heard about how he was a sorcerer, he tears families apart, Quraysh were spreading lies and what have you, and people went and they're like, I'm gonna go check him out, all right? And they go and they just go look at him, like, that's not the face of a liar. Became Muslim. Just looked at him, their lives changed, okay? And so that happens as well in his inheritors and these people that are friends of God. The same exact thing happens. People just look at them and their lives changed, okay? How many people, just by seeing someone who's pious, okay, their lives changed. Suddenly, they were reminded of Allah Ta'ala. Suddenly, they were reminded of maybe a mistake they made they want to repent from, or something they've left from the sunnah they want to pick up again. Just seeing them change their lives. How many people, it's a true story, right? How many people on the face of the earth just walk around and people just come and like admire them for what they have represented the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And how many people, just like the Prophet ﷺ, they just walk around on the face of the earth. People just see them and become Muslim. Happens, right? It absolutely happens, all right? So the point is, these people, they are very special. And they are the people who Allah sent to humanity to do what? To lift them. It's through connection to them that what happens? What happens? People are elevated. People become guided. People learn about their religion. People are sent to the highest levels of heaven. There's a famous hadith, Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he was sitting with his companions. Okay? He was sitting with his companions. Okay? He was sitting with his companions outside of Medina. And the person narrating the hadith, Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, obviously everyone knows who he is, right? He was the Prophet, someone of his closest companions. He was not just his companion, he was also his family. He was his father-in-law. Prophet married his daughter Hafsa radiallahu anha. Okay? So, great friend of his, family member, they're sitting there. Okay? He's amongst the people with him. Out of the desert comes what? Comes a Bedouin man. A man, okay, just walks out of the desert. White clothes, pressed, clean. Hair clean, jet black, clean, slicked back, looking fresh, comes out of the desert. Now imagine, right? Imagine, you guys saw how muddy it is on the way here, how muddy and like dirty and everything it is, right? Someone just comes out of the forest from that parking lot and they're just looking crisp, okay? Tamam? Their shoes, not a speck of dirt on it, okay? There's like, I don't even know, there's like, I don't know, like plants that you just snag your clothes and they tear them up and weird stuff gets on your clothes on the way here. None of that happens. Someone just comes, right? And they're just, where did you come from? This is really weird. If you've ever been to a desert, all it takes is one gust, all right? One little breeze, okay? And a little bit of time out there with some sweat and you're just dirty, okay? He just comes out looking like that. Everyone's like, this is kind of strange. He comes, what does he do? He sits in front of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Right in front of him, knee to knee. Like literally, like as if, imagine, if this is me, this is another person, a desk, right? And just boom, right in front of him, super close, okay? And everyone's getting more weirded out. You come out of the desert, you're gonna sit like that, who can you be? The only way you'd sit like that with someone is if what? You know them really well. You know them really well. Now these are people who know the Prophet for years. And they're like, who's this guy? All right? So he sits there, and what happens? He asks the Prophet ﷺ. He says, Ya Rasulullah, O Ya Muhammad, akhbirni an al-Islam. Oh, Muhammad, tell me about Islam, okay? And then, so the Umar was like, this is getting weirder and weirder. Okay, let's see where this goes. So Muhammad, Prophet ﷺ says, he says what? Al-Islam, an tashhad, an la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, wa an tuqim as-salah, wa tu'ti zakah, wa tasum Ramadan, tamam, وإيش? تحج البيت الله من استطاع إليه سبيلا. To testify, Islam is to testify there's no God except Allah Ta'ala, the Prophet is his messenger, to pray, to establish the prayer, to fast, to give your zakat, and to hajj if you're able to. The man says what? Sadaqt. He says, you've spoken truthfully. The man. This is weird now. He comes out of nowhere, sits like that, okay? He asks a question and he tells him you've spoken truth. Why are you asking questions? But he does it. Next question, the guy asks again. He says, Ya Muhammad, akhbirni al-iman. What does he say? He says, al-iman. إيش؟ أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقدر خيره وشره. تمام? To believe in Allah Ta'ala and the angels and His messengers and His books and the angels, the books, and the messengers, and the day of judgment, and that all good is from Allah Ta'ala, like destiny is from Allah Ta'ala. He says, Sadaqt, you've spoken the truth. Strange, right? Third question, he says, Ya Muhammad, akhbirni al-ihsan. He says, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. To worship Allah as if you can see Him. And if you can't, at least you know He sees you. And he says, Sadaqt. Then he says, Ya Muhammad, mata sa'a. He says, Oh Muhammad, when is the hour? When is the last day? When is all this going to end? And Prophet looks at him and says that, and he basically says, I don't know, the person you're asking doesn't know any more than you. Okay? So he said, okay, tamam, akhbirni bi'alamatiha. Tell me about its signs. So he mentions two signs. He says, tamam, when the woman gives birth to her mistress, tamam, when a woman gives birth to her mistress, okay? And when you see the barefoot Bedouin, poor Arabs competing in the desert to build tall buildings. Man just sleeps, okay? So the Prophet looks, says in Umar, right? And he's probably really confused right now. What's going on? What happened? Who's this guy? Okay? I don't know him. No one here knows him. He comes like this, sits like that, asks 3 questions, 4 questions, affirms the answer every time. It's really strange. So then he says, Atadri man as-sa'il. He asked Umar ibn al-Khattab anhu. He says, do you know who that person was who asked those questions? He said, Allahu wa Rasul a'lam. And he says, Huwa Jibreel atakum yu'allimukum dinakum. That was the angel Gabriel. He came to teach you your religion. Now look at this. The obvious thing that he taught them was what? What Islam was, what Iman was, what Ihsan was, and some signs of the Day of Judgment, right? But look at this. How did he learn that from the Prophet ﷺ? He came straight to him. Okay? He came straight to him. He came to him with etiquette, with adab, right? And he sat in front of him and he asked him questions properly and he received answers. So when he says he came to teach your religion, it's not just the information that was exchanged between them in the dialogue. It was in how the information was exchanged that is also an important part of this religion. This religion is taken from whom? From the Prophet ﷺ. And so even now, when he's moved on to the next life, ﷺ, who do we take this religion from? His inheritors. Okay, his inheritors. The people who've taken from people who've taken from to the Prophet ﷺ, right? You come to them and you take from them. And so those people, many of whom who are people like this, right? Those are the people that what? That deserve people's love, people's attention, people's focus, people's admiration, and people's, they're like iqtida, كيف تقول iqtida بالإنجليزي. They're role modeling, like take him as a role model, okay? Take him as a role model, okay? Those are the people. And for that reason, going against them, these people who were put here to guide people to God, going against them is really severe. And doing the opposite, loving them and going after them, is incredibly precious. Imam Haddad says, he says in the book, Adab Suluk al-Murid, it's been translated into a book called Good Manners. Okay, he says, in like the first chapter, I think, or second chapter, he says that everyone's path to Allah Ta'ala starts with what? Yeah, but before that, before you take the path, you have to have something that pushes you onto the path, okay? Something that inspires you, something that makes you just move, okay? Something that makes you move. He calls it a ba'ith, something that is put in your heart that makes you go, okay? This ba'ith, he says, comes from different things, okay? One of them, he says, is to just see a man of God. And you just get something in your heart and boom, you're gone. Tamam, you're gone. So just seeing someone who's pious, okay, spending time with them and looking at them and them looking at you, khalas, it's gone. That feeling comes. That feeling can come. It can come to certain people, okay? So that's the reason these people are so special. That's the reason these people are so special. So he says, after that, he says, وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُ عَلَيْهِ. He says, nothing that a servant can do, tamam, is more beloved to me, or nothing brings a servant closer to me and is more beloved to me than what? Than what is obligatory, the obligatory actions, okay? And you guys have learned some of these things, right, in some of your classes, to pray 5 times a day, to fast Ramadan, to what? To pay zakah if you have the money for it. What else? To be a good brother, to be a good roommate, to be a good, child to your parents, to be a good spouse, to be a good parent, okay? A lot of things, okay? From the obligations as well, it's to stay away from the haram. You're obligated to stay away from what's haram, right? So, for example, to stay away from stealing, to stay away from, oppressing others, to stay away from backbiting, to stay away from calling people mean names, to staying away from looking at what's haram, or listening to what's haram, or talking about what's haram, so on and so forth, okay? What else is it? He says, وَمَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبُّهُ. So he says, after that, a servant continues to get close to me through what? Through recommended actions or things that are extra credit. Until I love him. Look at the sequence here. Okay? First, obligated things. Okay? And then nawafil, things that are extra credit. Until what? He says it. حتى أحبه. تمام? حتى أحبه. Until I love him, he says. فإذا أحببته كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به. تمام? If I love him, or when I love him, I become, tamam, his hearing with which he hears with. And I become his sight with which he sees with. And I am his hand with which he does with. Okay? And I am his feet with which he walks with. Tamam. And if he asks me, I give him. And if he seeks refuge in me, then I give him refuge. Okay? So he says all this, that after that, what happens? A servant, if they become beloved to Allah Ta'ala and Allah loves him, tamam, he does what? Allah becomes the hearing with which he hears with, the sight with which he sees with, the hands with which he deals with, and the feet with which he walks with, tamam. This is all a metaphor. A metaphor in what? That Allah Ta'ala, tamam, gives him, is looking after him. Allah Ta'ala is protecting him. Allah Ta'ala is ensuring his success. Just like how, for example, imagine, right, you are sitting here and you are taking an exam and you're like, I have no idea what this question is. And then the teacher comes and while you're holding the pen, puts his hand on the pen and moves your hand and writes the right answer for you. Okay? It's like that. Allah is the one who is, even though he creates everyone's actions, and everyone's actions in this world are creations of God, okay? He's saying here, through Allah's protection of these people, his guidance to these people, his ensuring success for this people, tamam, all this is as if Allah is what they hear with, as if it is what they see with, as if it is what they deal and what they walk with. If they were to ask Allah, Allah does what? He gives. And if they were to ask for refuge, tamam, what happens? He gives refuge. Okay, he gives refuge. And so these people are special for that reason. And he starts this section with this hadith as a way to show us that to become like them, it requires what? Mujahada. To become like them requires mujahada. He says what? He says nothing a servant does is more beloved to Allah Ta'ala except for what? The obligatory. And then after that, the nawafil. Until Allah loves them. Okay? Until Allah loves them. And after that, what happens? Allah is the one who ensures their success. Allah is the one who takes care of them. Allah is the one who protects them. And He does what? He gives them what? He gives them whatever they ask for. And He protects them whenever they seek His protection. So this is the very first hadith that he cites in this section on mujahada. Tamam? In this section on mujahada. Tamam? Are there any questions? Yeah. Sure. Signs that what? What are the signs he says that Allah Ta'ala has waged war upon someone? Well, the signs are if they're bad to his awliya, that's one sign, right? Okay. And it's enough to see someone doing bad things, like to be in this bad state, to know that Allah, they're not exactly getting the mercy of God. Yeah. Do you have two? Okay.
When it talks about waging war, in terms of the usury, I had heard that that on Yawm al Qiyamah, like it'll be as if it was like a physical fight. That a person will be handed, or that a person will be given an array of weapons to choose from, and will actually like be in a physical like fight with Allah, as if like a person could even like try, or like even like think about doing that.
Yeah. Wallahu alam. I don't know if there's a hadith that hasn't reached me. Wallahu alam. Yeah.
Scholars of the spiritual path talk about al-fana fillah, like, is that what's described in this hadith?
So he says, the brother asked, when the scholars talk about al-fana billahi ta'ala, or when the people of Tasawwuf talk about al-fana billahi ta'ala, is this what he's talking about? Not necessarily. This is talking about the general love and protection Allah gives those people. Al-fana is, al-fana, linguistically, al-fana means like to evaporate, like to be destroyed, like to dissipate, to annihilate. It's just like gone. Okay. What they mean though when they say al-fana billah, like you're evaporated, or like you're gone, or like you annihilate yourself for the sake of Allah. What they mean that is like you're so encompassed in Him, tamam. You're so encompassed in Him that like almost like yourself is gone. Okay. What that means though is the following. Let me just paint a picture for you all. Imagine someone you really love. Okay, someone you really love, okay? And that person's in extreme danger right before you, okay? You're gonna forget everything, okay? And you're just engrossed in that person. You're gonna save that person's life, okay? No matter what it takes. You see it like, people jump into burning buildings to save people they love, okay? Without any masks or tanks, or like oxygen tanks, or like, protective gear. They're gonna get them out. They forget themselves. They forget their own, So what this means is that al-fana bala, as if they're so engrossed in God, right? That in a way, like that's all they think about. They've kind of forgotten themselves in a way. Okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I've heard a teacher say it is wajib, it's like this is wajib upon someone to seek sinful, and like to seek to be upon one of those who are like considered Allah's friends.
So it's obligatory. You said you've heard it's obligatory to seek sainthood.
Like to be a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It's obligatory to be one.
Yeah, to seek that, to seek that state.
To want to be that way.
Yeah.
It's obligatory to make a commitment to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ by leaving everything that's haram and to do what's obligatory. Okay? But specifically to seek sainthood, wallahu alam. I'm not sure if I will.
I think the context is like because I was when we were going through it, I was thinking it from the context of like when a person is engrossed in these things, they ultimately, their heart inclines to just be in full submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in that matter, like when you're doing these actions, you seek like it's wajib for you to seek these things, like to do these actions, and through that you gain like
maybe.
Yeah.
In that way, yeah, I guess it's wajib for you to do those things that would give you sainthood. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. My question was just when we were just kind of went over the pillars of Iman, and I know this might be like a much longer answer question, but it was just asking about free will and understanding that because everything's by Allah's decree. He writes out all of our actions, all of the things that we do. How do we kind of understand how free will works if everything's already written out in free will in comparison to how like maybe like animals or angels or jinn, and how I guess all of that works, just trying to understand it better.
Yeah. So free will, the best way to understand free will is the following. Okay? All right. Would you guys all agree that you guys came here of your own free will? Right? Everyone came here of their own free will. Okay? So there's no doubt that there's free will. Okay? How do you reconcile that with the fact that, we know Allah knows everything that ever was and ever will be? Okay? So here's how you reconcile. Think of it this way. All right? All right. So maybe some of you guys have experienced this as well. Through your knowledge of someone, okay, how well you know them, you can predict what they're going to do. Okay? You know exactly what they're going to do. Okay? So it only makes sense that the one who created everything, okay, despite giving them free will, knows exactly what they're going to do. Okay? Just like how, for example, I'll give you a really practical example, right? A teacher, within a week, he's going to know he's going to fail the class. He's going to know he's going to get an A. He's going to know he's going to get a B. He's going to know he's going to get a C. He just knows it, right? And almost every time, it's just going to play out exactly like he knew was going to happen, okay? And that's not like, he's not making them fail the class, right? He's not making them get A's. Like, he's not manipulating their act. He just knows the students so well, okay? That khalas, he just knows what's going to happen. And usually, the exam is just a formality, okay? And just going to confirm what the teacher already knew, okay? That's a good teacher, at least. A bad teacher might not know. But anyway, so that is what usually happens, right, in a class, okay? So that's how you reconcile free will with Allah's knowledge of everything, okay? Allah's knowledge of everything. Does that make sense? Yeah. طيب. So, do you guys have any more questions? Yes.
Because when I explained that same explanation to a friend, the next thing they said was like, then why did Allah not create us in a way that we would do good?
Yeah, so then why did Allah not create us in a way that we would do good? Because, tamam, well, the ultimate answer is he's Allah, he can do what he wants, right? That's the thing we have to reconcile in our minds. Like, what does it mean to be God, right? God does as he wants, okay? He does as he wills. And if someone has dominion over anything, tamam, they can do whatever they want with that thing. So all of creation is Allah's dominion, okay? And he can do whatever he wants with them. To put in terms you can understand, right? Like, we all own like our books, okay? Why did you write on that page? Why didn't you write on the page after that? Why did you use a black pen, right? You don't have to, it's your stuff. You don't have to answer my questions. You can do whatever you want with it, So that's the first thing. When it comes to dominion, right? The person who has dominion over something can do whatever they want with it. That is why we call him Rabb. Like, he's the Lord. Like, he is the Lord of everything. So that's the first thing, okay? So you don't have to he doesn't have to take questions as to why he did things. It's his creation. The second thing is that he created beings, tamam. He created beings in this way with taklif, like with legal responsibility and free will to go against the commandments of Allah Ta'ala. Why? It's in the Quran, right? لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَحْسُنَ عَمَلًا. To see which people do good. To see which people, tamam, would choose Allah over their own desires and passions in the dunya. Tamam? So that's why. Tamam? That's why. But ultimately, it's the first answer. He's the Lord, and he's God, and he just, khalas, he does as he wills. Any last questions before we move on? Okay. يا خير. تنشد.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله. صلى الله على محمد صلى الله على محمد صلى الله على محمد وعلى